banks and private equity firms can also tackle a wider breadth of deals, both across sectors and also in terms of size. With a product like Farsight, they can very quickly become domain experts in other sectors. So let's say in particular, an investment bank or private equity firm really deals with energy and that's their forte. And now they want to go into like fintech. With Farsight, they can start to enable themselves to be thought leaders and start doing deals in these sectors because they have the domain knowledge and can learn from the insights that Farsight generates. And so it not only increases volume, it also increases the diversity of the types of deals that they can cover.
What makes our product pretty unique in the market today. And I think it's frankly needed for anybody to use AI at the full capability that these systems are trending towards. It needs to be able to not force you to learn a whole different workflow. It should be able to learn your own workflow. It should be able to be chuckable the way that you do your work. And so we've spent a lot of time being very conscious of how we design our system to follow these steps. And while it's very difficult for us to do, it makes the product all the more usable for our end customers.
Welcome back to Tank Talks. I'm your host, Matt Cohen, and we've got another incredible episode lined up for you today on how AI is completely reshaping investment banking and killing off the 100-hour work weeks in the process. We're joined by Kunal Tangri and Noah Faro, two of the co-founders of Farsight AI, a red-hot fintech startup out of New York City, backed by SingleFire, RRE, and others. These guys are building what they call the operating system for finance, a platform that automates pitch decks, models, memos, client insights in a fraction of the time, directly inside the tools bankers already live in, like Excel and PowerPoint. With roots at MIT and past lives at Hugging Face, Amazon, and Wall Street, Kunal and Noah bring a rare mix of AI horsepower and financial grit. Their company has grown 10x in revenue in just a year, and they're helping banks, PE firms, hedge funds, and wealth managers do the things were previously impossible without hallucinating or breaking security. We get into the late-night pain points that inspired Farsight, why no new window was their make-or-break UX decision, how they're scaling safely post-Series A, and what the junior banker will look like in 2030. Now let's jump into the tank for this week's episode with Noah and Kunal from Farsight AI. Thanks for joining us in the tank today, Kunal and Noah.
Hey, great to be here.
Oh, great. Well, we got two co-founders here. We're missing the third one here, but we'll make do with what we have. I'd love to kick things off with a bit about your personal backgrounds, where you grew up, your early educational backgrounds, and some of your early professional highlights before we get into how you and your co-founders met before launching Farsight AI. So why don't we kick off with you, Noah?
Yeah. So I grew up in upstate New York, near Albany, in a town called Saratoga. Most famous for the racetrack that's there, the horse racetrack, if anyone's familiar with it. But went there. Then I went to school at MIT where I met Kunal and Samir. Studied computer science for a bit, dabbled in startups and big tech alike. So I was a founding engineer at a startup called Spritz Finance. Worked as an infrastructure and backend engineer at Amazon, and then also participated in AI research at the Media Lab. So I was doing research with the Effective Computing Group, was trying to determine correlations between the severity of someone's depression and triaxial accelerometer data. So things from like wearables, like an Apple Watch. So been dealing with unstructured data for quite a while. Was dealing with accuracy in AI in very impactful industries like healthcare and finance for a while. And that led me to being really interested in starting a company with the other two of Kunal and Samir. And that's how we got here.
That's awesome. Kunal, how about yourself?
Yeah, so I grew up in Michigan, a town called Troy, pretty close to Detroit. Love Michigan. Been a Michigan fan my whole life, but did end up going to MIT. Studied computer science there, similar to both Noah and Samir. But from there, also been involved in startups on and off throughout my time. I think it's a pretty MIT thing to do, especially when all your friends are similarly doing it. Kind of lowers the risk level and makes it a lot more approachable. After graduation, I actually stayed on to do my master's at MIT, at MIT CCEL. Studied AI-specific tech, so focused on predicting bias and factuality from news media. I'm also very top of mind at that time. While working on that, started coming across this framework in this company called Hugging Face quite a bit. And that was actually what instigated me to apply for a job there when they were super early, just because everybody in my lab was using it, looked like super cool tech. So from that master's program, went to Hugging Face as an early employee, got to advise a lot of their really large enterprise clients. on AI strategy. So I got to pick up kind of trends across the market, pre-LLM era, post-LLM era, what people were working on. But yeah, I mean, I think at that point, just super exciting space, moving so fast. Wanted to kind of make an impact where I had more ownership over the project, and so similarly decided that it was a good time to put my head together with Noah and Samir and build a team here.
That's awesome. And your other co-founder and CEO, Samir Duda, he also obviously has a Master of Engineering and Bachelor of Science in Computer Science at MIT. Prior to Farsight, he was a growth equity investor at General Atlantic and an M&A investment banker at Evercore. So the three of you all met at MIT, but you went on to do kind of different roles for a few years before founding Farsight in 2022. How much were you guys talking in between finishing MIT, going on into your early parts of your career, and what kind of things were pulling you back into a common thread of like, oh, wow, there's a change happening here that we should all think about maybe rejoining forces after graduating?
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
we were friends for like the entire time. So we were in like full communication for the few years post graduation before sounding Farsight. And I think from our perspective, one of the conversations that we were having a lot as we, were participating in grown-up jobs was how much of our work was not actually directly attributable to like the value that we had at these companies. So like for me at Amazon, I was doing a lot of overhead work or like focusing on deployments or like ticket writing or things like that. Like all of that should be automated. And some of the loudest voices in the room were our friends in finance, like Samir, for example, where they're sitting there, they're doing PowerPoints and Excels, and they're spending so much time in materials creation and really grunt level work when they could be so impactful in other parts of the industry. And so the three of us obviously have been friends for a very long time. And when we put our heads together and we were like this common thread that if the three of us tackled it together, we could do that. And we have a very unique skill set to be able to do that with Samir's finance experience and Kunal and I's software and AI experience. It was a very clear opportunity for the three of us to make a big impact in an industry that was ripe for change.
Yeah, as someone who worked on Wall Street as well, like finance bros always complain about the manual work they're always doing. So I don't know anything different than what Samir said to convince you, the two of you, to leave some pretty important jobs at, Amazon and Hugging Face. But Kunal, like, was there an aha moment or something that really went off to make you believe in what Samir was saying was actually possible?
Yeah, probably a couple of things. The first one was, after college, Samir and I actually lived together for a brief period of time in New York, and I do distinctly remember him coming home at 4 a.m. or not even I'd seeing him at home at all. And a large part was due to that manual work he had to put together, right? And at the same time, I was working on doing some automations with the companies I was advising at Hugging Face, at Bloomberg, do Signal Points, these financial services oriented companies, and even pre LLMs. There was so much ripe for automation at that point. And then, post LLM era has just accelerated what the capabilities or feasibility for what can be automated is. So I think, seeing probably some of the trauma that Samir and general financial services folks have to go through with the crazy hours and manual work they have to put in, seeing that combined with how much now is capable to be automated, I think that's really when it started to click.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot has changed, obviously, since when you guys started Farsight in 2022 in New York. But what was the first working hypothesis that you guys had in terms of what could be an AI-powered automation tool for financial workflows and decision-making that really helped take a lot of that manual workflow, a repetitive task, out of the process that Samir and other people in banking and hedge funds do all the time? Like, was there one perfect use case that you thought of starting with first, or was there just a bunch and it was just like shooting fish in a barrel? Kunal, what was like that sort of thought for you in where we would start? Was it Excel, PowerPoint, PDF docs?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I'm trying to think back to the initial inception of the idea we had for Farsight. And I think where we had started was actually somewhat Excel based, not necessarily like the form factor, but the type of work we were doing. We're actually looking at general comps that we could
Right.
find. And I think the task itself was very retrieval oriented, but very quality sensitive and auditability sensitive. So we started there just because I think that was also one of the big trauma points from Samir's prior role, where doing these workflows keeps him up late at night, has to do it a ton of times per year. So we started there, but I think very quickly it became clear that one, we were onto something with matching workflows as financial analysts do them. But two, I think that kind of opened the door to there's a ton of other tangential or adjacent workflows that we should start going down. And I think that's when we started dipping our toes into looking at PowerPoint and more deeper Excel-based workflows. And so, started to test those out with customers and see how they were receptive to it. And I think that's where we kind of helped us converge to the end workflows we ended up kind of initially starting with.
If you speak to anyone who works in investment banking or even consulting, it's always the pitch decks that keeps them up till 4 a.m. But there's a lot of things in the guts of a pitch deck that people don't see that gets presented in a pitch deck, right? So was it just the presentation and of the data in the pitch deck that was a pain point that you thought you could solve? Or was it actually the raw data or the raw unstructured data that was inputted into a pitch deck that the investment bankers really hated working on? Noah, how did you think about this, given your technical expertise working at AWS and prior jobs, that thought we can actually make both of these perfectly automated rather than one less manual and one completely automated?
Yeah, I think from day one, we kind of were under the agreement that if you weren't able to do both, it's almost not valuable. If you're not able to go end to end and you're only able to retrieve the information or actually put it on a slide or in an Excel model, there's still a large gap in the value that you can create. And so from day one, we wanted to be able to tackle both. And the ways that we thought about whether or not that was possible was looking at them as kind of two separate problems. We were inspired by the structure and formats of our customers. So if we're able to look at example materials that they're able to give us and have a technical system be able to understand and break it down into smaller pieces, then we knew that we were able to go get the information to fill out those pieces. And so that's how we sort of looked at this problem, where we looked at it as an output first, format first, workflow first technical system. And then by understanding what the end goal was, we needed to create a chart that contained XYZ information, or we needed to create this section of a slide deck that, pertains to this financial analysis. Then we could actually do the work and retrieve the information to fill it out, rather than go retrieve the information and then try to figure out how to format it on a slide. It made it a much more tangible and digestible process for AI agents to actually do.
Yeah, for you, Noah, the CTO, obviously you wanted to make sure that the tech was real. What kind of early, data analysis or sort of modeling did you do to realize that you actually could provide value to, let's face it, some of these people in, hedge funds or wealth management or investment banking are pretty skeptical when it comes to trusting new technology doing their job for them. But when they see the data actually do it for them and actually prove itself to be better and faster, then they're fully bought in and they move very quickly. So what was it that you had to demonstrate from a benchmarking standpoint that you could deliver something better, faster, cheaper, call it?
I think, honestly, benchmarking wasn't necessarily the turning point in terms of trust. I think it was citations. So when it came to the early days of LLMs and ChatGPT and all the hype wave that was AI 4 years ago, people were asking questions and weren't really sure about whether or not it was correct. Now, if you ask it who was the president of the United States in 1980, the impact of that is a lot less than if you're asking it to pull the full financials for the past 10 years for Google. And the audit trail of us pulling that information and actually being able to cite it correctly was, I think, was really the unlock in the ability for these highly scrutinizing, very particular professionals to be able to trust an AI system that was able to do so much work under the hood. So when we came to the door with citations and allowing them to do a full check of everything that we do, that allowed them to have a lot of faith in Farsight as a product.
Right. And you said, I've researched that there was huge gaps in what the LLMs were producing in terms of answers when people were presenting it with very technical, financially data-driven questions. How do you think that gap can be kind of fine-tuned into a much more acceptable rate of error? Or is there zero room for error when talking with these kind of sophisticated customers, Kunal? How do you kind of bridge that gap?
Yeah, I mean, there's always a little bit of tolerance, but I think it needs to be bridged very quickly. And two, the citations thing, I think we'll continue to hammer on, which is as long as you can look through the work and understand where it got what information it retrieved. It's much easier to correct mistakes or tweak it the last 10%. You need to make sure it's a finished product from where the AI leaves off. So I think when we had started out, there was a few distinct gaps with LLM specifically. These were things like the ability to be domain adaptable. How well can they speak or understand financial jargon? Another thing was calculations and hallucinations as it relates to calculations or more general information as well. And I think LLMs themselves have improved quite a bit in all of those capabilities, but definitely still have more potentially nuanced gaps in each of them. So domain adaptability, while speaking financial jargon is a little bit easier for today's LLMs, I think a piece that's missing still and probably will always be missing, kind of needs to be built at the layer on top of LLMs, like the system level, is how do you not just adapt to the financial domain, but how do you adapt to a firm specific way of thinking about a problem, or even a team specific way of thinking about a problem? And so that's much easier, much more easily done with systems the LLM can draw on to understand. Okay, great, I'm going down this type of workflow. Here's the context I have about how the team approaches this typically, and let me leverage that to help educate how I walk through this process. And similarly, the hallucination and calculation side, though it's improved in LLM performance, still definitely it comes down to the citations problem that Noah brought up, right? We need to be able to give financial professionals a very easy way to audit any calculations that are done, and we do that via Excel. We do the calculations the exact same way that an analyst would, so that that analyst who's using the AI system can very quickly go check the results, but also they can pass that up to their senior folks who similarly take a pass through everything. It's done the exact same way they would do it. Super easy to understand, super easy to audit, super easy to follow. So yeah.
That makes sense. I mean, transparency, audit logs, citations all make sense in terms of showing the results the way they're used to seeing them. But what about the standardization of how these people work? How do you adopt to that? They live in Excel, they live in PowerPoint, not looking for another window to kind of jump between to do the job. Kunal, what is it about the way you guys think about presenting, the user experience that resonates with your customers early on, and how have you molded to the way they work? Because workflow management, change management, in this industry is not easy to do.
Yep. Yeah, no, definitely. We think it's super crucial. Nobody wants to go learn yet another tool, especially with the AI field kind of producing 1 million of them a day at the current pace. So integrating and making the friction towards adoption of these products, I think, is super critical and will remain super critical. I think on top of that, though, integrating directly into the workflow allows us to take the same intermediate steps that the folks in the field already do today. So, whether that's producing intermediate Excels that can be checked, like we've already mentioned, that then back up an Excel slide, whether that's sourcing the information the exact same way that folks are used to checking. These are all things that make it easier for adoption, make it easier to check the work, but definitely do come with additional difficulty on our end to get right. But look, that's a large part of, I think, what makes our product pretty unique in the market today. And I think it's frankly needed for anybody to use AI at the full capability that these systems are trending towards. It needs to be able to not force you to learn a whole new different workflow. It should be able to learn your own workflow. It should be able to be chuckable the way that you do your work. And so we've spent a lot of time being very conscious of how we design our system to follow these steps. And while it's very difficult for us to do, it makes the product all the more usable for our end customers.
Yeah, and I assume, you obviously landed like a flagship design partner early on to learn the most, the things that you need to get right before obviously building a go-to-market strategy. But Noah, what did you learn from that first flagship design partner? How did you manage that relationship and eventually turn it into a customer and partner that helped you build the product the way that obviously it wanted to be used from these very, skeptical and sophisticated buyers?
I think one of the biggest things that we were able to do is really develop a cohesive system for adopting and fully automating the workflows to accommodate their format. So when it came to working with a customer, we had been developing a system with our language and our formats and our templates and how we do slide decks and Excel models. But when you go into a customer for the first time, and landing a design partner was really crucial for this, it really almost tests the generalization of your product. And for us, we didn't really have a cohesive system at the time of how to adopt, how to handle their, updates to formats, or how to handle their requests, or like their new things that they wanted to add to the Farsight system. And through that partnership, we were able to really hone in on what that system looked like, and also allowed us to really test our technology in the wilderness and see how it adopted the new templates and formats of our customers. So I think that is really the biggest takeaway, was really crafting what is now a very, very important part of Farsight. And honestly, an incredible amount of credit goes to them for being able to work with us at that stage of the company.
I mean, it obviously paid off because, in June 2025, you guys announced you raised $16 million in a Series A funding round led by Signal Fire, with participation from RRE Ventures, Link Ventures, K5 Ventures, and a bunch of strategic angels from Blackstone and Oaktree. So I feel like you guys have a really strong group of strategic investors. But what do you think was it that really got them to believe in writing a large, term sheet into a company like this that's going up against, let's face it, a lot of tangential competitors and people trying to solve similar problems in different ways for an industry that's always trying to take down like the Bloomberg operating system?
Yeah, I think it honestly boils down to something really simple, which when you look at a lot of AI companies across the board, let's just take finance out of it for a second. A lot of them are just retrieving information. So when it comes to like their impact, they're only doing 10, 20% of the actual work. When you think about how you use, ChatGPT in most settings, you have to figure out what information you need to gather to provide enough context to even answer a question. And then once you get the results, you need to actually do something with the results that you get from it. And so going into the pitch and going into conversations with strategic angels, and especially going into sales conversations, it's something where we're constantly saying, hey, we're not just getting you the information, we're actually doing the physical work end to end, so you can completely remove this piece from your day to day. And when you look at other industries, the ones that are doing that in other industries are the winners. You look at hiring and you look at a company like Mercor, where they're actually doing the interviews for you. They're completely dominating that space. When you look at, code writing, you're looking at the cursors or the lovables, ones that are actually writing the code for you and building full systems for you. That is doing the end-to-end work, and they're the ones dominating that space. And so I think it's a very easy thesis to agree with, where if you're actually doing the work in a sector like finance, that is going to be the winner. And so when you compare us to other competitors in the space, I think for companies like Signal Fire, venture firms like Signal Fire, and all of the strategic angels that we talked to, it was an easy decision to understand why Farsight is going to win the space.
Yeah, I mean, you guys are taking on a bunch of different use cases, Kunal. I want to ask you, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to quickly add to that. I think, the thesis has been there since day one, with what Noah just said. And I think it was pretty good bet for us to make at that time. We kind of arrived at this, own the end-to-end workflow before agents was even a buzzword. But that's definitely paying dividends for us now, right? This is definitely been the year where agents have started becoming way more top of mind, way more feasible even. And so it coincided nicely with us having already put kind of the building blocks in place to own the end-to-end workflow. And now I think we can benefit from this massive tailwind of much more end-to-end workflows being possible. And so, yeah, I mean, that owning the workflow has really paid off for us.
I mean, you're not just owning a workflow, you're owning many, many workflows. Like, what I was researching and what you guys are doing in the use cases and the customers that you're attracting within finance, it's not very common. You can service all different aspects of the financial ecosystem. We're talking about, end-to-end automation of documents like pitch decks, financial models, investment banking memos, client communications. You're doing all the integrations, in CRM, past deals, proprietary databases. You've got the seamless integration with security features and workflows, data protection. And then you're working across multiple industries. We're talking investment banking, so sales materials, buy-side research materials, private equity for data room screening, investment committee decks, wealth management as well, tailored client solutions and analysis. And then lastly, hedge funds, right? Uncovering market insights and executing on significant opportunities for them. It feels like at the stage of company you're like way past the Series A company in terms of all the use cases. So first off, Kunal, like how are you choosing where to be focused and targeted without being spread too thin? And how can you determine the next use case to apply yourself to from a technology standpoint, not knowing if you can deliver, on the results you've delivered on past use cases?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. Frankly, it's always like very difficult to keep up with. But I think the North Star for us, first and foremost, is what do we hear from customers, right? We're working with enough people right now to understand, are there needs that we aren't fulfilling today that we should be fulfilling? And is there massive demand in market for a new system that we need to build? So I think that's step one. I think step two, and this is maybe my flavor from more like an AI focus, and I think Noah will probably be able to speak to some more of the engineering side things. But for me, I think given that this is the year of agents, right, and end-to-end workflow automation is super much more feasible now. One of the big guiding factors for work streams is making sure we stay up kind of on top of the latest research, the latest frameworks, the latest capabilities that have come out on the AI side, because they are now just making the full end-to-end workflows much more feasible for automation, meaning we have to maintain our competitive advantage, be on top of the latest advancements so that we know when the latest thing comes out, is this applicable to our product, and can we bring it to market before any of our competitors do, to make sure we maintain that competitive advantage. But that's mainly the focus for the AI point of view of development here. I'm sure Noah does have other things he'd want to add for more engineering prioritization.
Yeah, I think the way that we're really thinking about prioritizing things is the way that we do workflows is not on like an isolated, like, oh, we can do pitch text or we can do sims or we can do like, XYZ. It's about building the underlying technology with the AI advancements that Kunal is referring to, and also just honestly core engineering work. The whole engineering team is focused on building generalized, basically features that enable new workflow adoptions. So when it comes to new workflows that customers may have, a lot of the times it's already translatable or already done with our underlying tech stack. And other times we need to develop new features or new core components of our system to actually accommodate them. But regardless, we're not really taking anything on that we don't think is translatable to other fields or other use cases or other workflows. And as a result, with the engineering effort that we put in, we get a lot of value creation across the board. And I think that that's how we're sort of focusing our engineering and AI efforts, is what is the most impact that we can get from our time. And if it's something where it's incredibly isolated to something that's like a very particular workflow, it's probably not worth our time. And that's sort of how we prioritize and don't spread ourselves too thin. Get the most bang for your buck, essentially.
That's amazing. I'm sure if Samir was here, he would, have his thoughts on this in terms of what, the future of investment banking, hedge funds is. From my own personal experience working on Wall Street in sales and trading, I saw, the forefront of algorithmic and quantitative trading and, high frequency trading take over the industry and basically make traders pretty much redundant and only turn them into block liquidity traders for large scale transactions. Now with AI, I can only imagine what investment bankers, and hedge fund analysts, and even consultants are thinking and feeling. Kunal, what are you thinking and seeing this type of technology can do to transform the industry, supercharge it, and make it more democratized in terms of getting access to these tools, but also change the business models for firms like Evercore, or Goldman Sachs, things like that. What do you think this future technology can hold for them?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think at the first level, it's how does this impact the day-to-day work that folks are doing at these banks? I think there's a lot right now that is in the manual, redundant kind of drudgery work that has to be done. And I think that's where AI can definitely make a huge impact and do the heavy lifting, right? And so I think there will be a big shift of focus there, not in terms of replacing junior workers who were taking care of this, but rather moving them to more strategic responsibilities, thinking about not just finding the work and making good looking PowerPoint slides or Excel models, but critically thinking about, hey, is there a unique edge or angle to this that either I specifically come up with, or perhaps their firm's domain knowledge helps twist into their competitive differentiator towards the market. But I think there's definitely going to be a shift from the really annoying, keep you up late at night, redundant work to this highly strategic work. And I think how that impacts the business longer term. These banks that you mentioned, for example, it's really just in terms of volume that they're able to drive through the door in terms of deals. Right, they're able to move through their diligence and their research processes way faster. They're able to significantly up level the quality of the work that they're delivering. So leads to faster outcomes, leads to higher value outcomes for these banks. And so at the end of the day, the hope here is people are working more on the things that are actually unique and interesting about the financial services industry. And things are getting done at a higher level of capability and way faster.
Yeah, I'll be honest. Go ahead, Noah.
A couple other tailwinds related to the last point that Kunal made. On top of just like enhanced volume, so like they can get more deals through the door. We've also seen that banks and private equity firms can also tackle a wider breadth of deals, both across sectors and also in terms of size. So when it comes to like maybe they are only dealing with deals that are between like 100 million and a billion or something like that for an investment bank. And now they can hit that tailwind or that like long tail of deals that are between 10 million and 100 million. Now they have a lot more time to spend on overall deals. And another piece of this as well is that with a product like Farsight, they can very quickly become domain experts in other sectors. So let's say in particular, an investment bank or private equity firm really deals with energy and that's their forte. And now they want to go into like fintech. With Farsight, they can start to enable themselves to be thought leaders and start doing deals in these sectors because they have the domain knowledge and can learn from the insights that Farsight generates. And so it not only increases volume, it also increases the diversity of the types of deals that they can cover.
Yeah, 100%. I've thought about this a lot, obviously, just coming from the industry in terms of like what this means for the consulting firms, right? If you're a McKinsey or a Bain or, an audit firm like, Ernst & Young or something like that, you had a minimum bar of customers you could service just because your overhead costs were so high. But now if you don't need to put as many analysts and principals and partners on every file, you can charge a lower ACV, maybe capture the same or better margin, but take a lower threshold of a deal. In the banking world, it's a little bit harder to kind of downsize this quickly, maybe not, but maybe for the mid-market and boutique players, they can now go much more horizontal, apply this type of technology to many different sectors where they only maybe focused on TMT or, as you said, energy or biotech before. They can now get up to speed quicker, not hire more bodies to do the manual work, but just have the relationship and the output the same, and take on more workload when they couldn't afford it before because they just couldn't have the working capital to hire more people in different satellite offices. So there's two games that are going to be played. The first mover advantages are going to be the ones who grab the most amount of opportunity at the lower right-hand side of the tail, as you said, Noah. Or there's people who are obviously too slow to adopt, and they're going to continue to stake in their own ways and hope that nobody fights up against their threshold of $10 million ACV contracts. But eventually those customers are going to be like, wait, I don't have to pay $10 million anymore to get the same value. I can pay $5 million or even $500K to get the same output as what you're saying by leveraging, Farsight as a tool that gets them there. It's super fascinating. Anything you want to add to that, Noah or Kunal?
No, I think that's a fantastic financial point as well, is the deal size. So like if you're spending, let's say, all of your analyst time is on those deals between 100 million and 1 billion right now, but you can just, take a eighth of an analyst's time to focus on like really small deals and then just churn them out because you care less about them. You could potentially hit like a massive amount of volume for a much lower like take from the actual deal. And it also is just so little like time investment from your team where you can just really increase your bottom line as a company. So definitely agree. That's a really fantastic analysis as well.
Yeah, we have an investment that's actually trying to focus on like this for the legal tech space, right? All the legal analysts that you have, it's like democratizing obviously the work that's being done there. So I think all of these high fee service-based jobs are going to have, their own opportunity to take on more workload because of this. Noah, I want to ask you a question that we hear a lot about regarding the financial services sector and their organizational security needs between between open source and closed source models, and how, in today's vertical applications, there is definitely a split between the two mixes. What are you seeing in terms of open source, closed source, on-prem, in the cloud? There was a big push to cloud for the last decade. Now we're hearing on-prem is something that people are actually valuing again. Is there a mix that you're seeing that enterprises love?
Yeah, sure. So, first of all, in terms of open source, closed source, there definitely is a mix that we see still. But I would say, anything that's agent intelligence or reasoning focused has heavily shifted towards closed source models. That's kind of the fastest pace of development right now, and tuning or integrating your own open source models can leave you kind of out to dry if that becomes obsolete in the next 2 months at the pace we're moving at. So. On that front, I think people like to stay with the closed source providers, easy to switch to the newest capabilities, easy to stay up to date. And frankly, everybody we've talked to at this point has their preferred kind of integrations with all the major closed source providers at this point. But that being said, there is definitely still some heavy lifting that's done via open source models, typically as either more traditional ML use cases that are more time series based, or more modeling based versus natural language reasoning based, and either in their own right they're useful, or as smaller subsystems for more agentic systems, including stuff we use in house at Farsight. Similarly, these open source models can be very good components that are smaller, more fine tuned towards very specific tasks that need to be accomplished. So that's predominantly where we see, I think, open source models still being used today. That being said, at Farsight, we think it's been pretty important to stay agnostic to models. We have our preferred closed source providers, but our system is tailorable to any mix of open source or closed source models as needed. Allows us to keep our framework as adaptable to the future as possible, but also allows us to satisfy customer needs pretty quickly if there are security constraints. Where open source models are much easier to support. So in terms of the second question there, which was kind of in VPC, on-prem, frankly, I think we've seen a large part of especially the AI related use cases just being deployed in VPC, whether that's Farsight hosted or customer hosted. I think given cutting edge speed of AI systems and the kind of need to adopt closed source, people are a little bit more receptive to operating fully in the cloud. And so, I think that's the fastest kind of pace of iteration, while still maintaining security needs if with the requirement of needing to bring it within a customer's VPC. But on premise, a little bit still kind of out of the picture for now.
Okay, well, maybe not as relevant as it is, as I'm hearing maybe anecdotally of what people are asking for versus what people are delivering. I guess maybe one question for you, Noah, is what was the toughest product use case that your product had to handle in a diligence process with a customer at scale that you were actually really pleased to see it handle, that even your customers were blown away by?
Yeah, I think one of the things that was the most difficult from a product development standpoint was our first go at SIMs. So when you think about what a SIM is, it's basically a free form formatted slide deck that exemplifies why why a company should be acquired, essentially. Hopefully I described that correctly.
It's a one-pager, it stands for Confidential Information Memorandum, CIM, and it's basically a document prepared by advisors for private equity firms to sell a business or buy a business.
Right. So when you think about what that is, they're representing a company, and that means that it has its own full formats, full information that it needs to pull from its own private data sources. So it's essentially taking a lot of Farsight's out of the box technologies where we're plugging into our own data pipelines and third-party data processes, and also our ability to match the formats of a specific deck, but have to do that fully on the fly with materials that they're giving us and formats and color schemes that they're also giving us. And so from a typological perspective in a diligence question, we had to answer the questions of, how are you storing our documents? Is it secure? Are you able to reference them and not train on them? Are your models able to work such that our data is not being exposed? Are you able to actually match the formats of something that would give you limited inspiration of, rather than, a big, Bank of America deck, for example, that is consistent over time. And so I think with SIMs, that was a perfect use case for us to really solve all of those problems. We're able to address not only the security concerns of the actual underlying models themselves, but also how we're dealing with all the private data and inspiration that we're getting from our customers. And so I think that was probably the toughest swing. But getting that out of the way, we're able to answer any security question that enterprises or any other bank or private equity firm or wealth manager, et cetera, could throw our way, both from a deployment perspective, like Kunal was just talking about, and from an actual product perspective with our reference materials.
That's super cool. Kunal, I'd like to ask you about the wealth management side of use cases because, I know the wealth management side, they're pretty old school. It's very relationship based. It's very stake and handshake kind of, long-term family, family wealth managers, right? And adopting technology, leveraging technology like Farsight to give more customized, tailored solutions while also kind of beholden to what products the bank or wealth manager wants to offer from the shelf is sometimes contradictory to what an AI tool like yours can kind of present. I guess what I would love to ask you, Kunal and Noah, if you were to describe Farsight's moat in a couple words, what would it be, and how is it going to evolve over time? We'll start with you, Kunal.
Yeah, I mean, workflow native. It's I think something we've been hammering on for this whole conversation, but it really is what our thesis was from day one here. It will continue to be in the future. I think kind of how that evolved over time, or I guess, first of all, where it is today, means that we support a lot of the out-of-the-box workflows in the ways that people do the work today. But how that evolves over time, I think it becomes a lot more flexible, adaptable in general. So rather than, the Farsight system having to take a pass at it and, things not being fully up to quality or still needing some additional tweaking on top of it, I think the system, especially benefiting from some technical tailwinds right now, will become a lot more general, a lot more configurable to users, a lot more guidable in terms of, hey, the first pass of this didn't exactly meet these criteria that I was looking for. Type in, a couple of pieces of feedback, and the system can take a full other pass through a draft. Or fully setting up and configuring your own automations that you would like to do with the Farsight system. I think these capabilities are becoming a lot more feasible now, and we've built the system thus far to make sure it's maintaining a good level of quality. It's come with a little bit more rigidity in what can be supported thus far, but those guardrails are starting to come off now, and so I think the evolution of the product is going to continue down that thesis of being workflow native. Being very custom fit to where people are today, but will become increasingly more general and more capable as it benefits from kind of the technical tailwinds.
That's awesome.
I would toss in uniquely agentic. So when it comes to Farsight's capabilities, we're not only creating materials or retrieving information, we're making decisions. And so our AI system in everything that we do is making decisions about how it should pull the information, how it should do some financial analysis, how it should format it. And it also is making decisions on behalf of the user, like, hey, I need to notify you about X trend in the market, or I need to tell you about XYZ. It's uniquely agentic in the fact that it's leveraging the very complex decision-making practices that are becoming more and more accepted or possible with AI frameworks that are being revealed every single day. And by allowing our system to be inherently built off of that, we're not just taking a bunch of information, throwing it at an LLM and expecting it to be able to answer the question and respond. We're building full frameworks and systems around making decisions and executing decisions. And I think that gives us a massive leg up, both to our competitors, but also to providing value to our end customers, because we're not just doing that surface level thinking. We're doing second, third, fourth order thinking about how do I execute this task? And what do I need to actually execute it? So I think uniquely agentic is another couple words that I think would really describe Farsight.
Yeah, it's super fascinating, the end-to-end ability that Farsight can accomplish in a very complicated sort of supply chain of tasks that are handed off between party to party in these types of workflows. I have to ask the question because it's so relevant to what we're talking about, and also in sort of the finance ecosystem, which is, finish this sentence for me. By 2030, junior bankers will spend most of their day doing blank.
Sleeping, doing what they want. No.
Okay.
I mean, my quick answer, and I'll let you go after now, is just hopefully, working on more strategic work. I think we alluded to it a little earlier, but where does that shift from doing the menial, redundant tasks go to? I think my hope there is that junior bankers are going to be working on a lot more of the strategic work that's much more interesting to them, and frankly, will probably be more akin to the work that more of the seniors spend their time on today.
Yeah, I think the summary of that as well is behave more like MDs or partners. If they're able to think more relationship based, more inbound based, more top of funnel based, rather than deal execution based, you're going to have a healthier and more involved group of people at your company. And at the same time, you'll also have a lot more of idea generation and strategic thinking that Kunal was getting at here. So if you're able to raise the bar for the quality of work and the type of work that everyone at the firm is doing, then you're able to do a lot more quality and higher level work that can provide a lot of value to the business. So behaving like an MD or a partner when you're coming straight out of college is probably something that we're looking to get to by 2030.
Oh, I can't wait to see the first MD at an investment bank after graduating, in the fall semester. But, I think it's really interesting. It's like, let the agents be agents or robots be robots and let the people be people is something we always kind of never thought was possible, because it was almost like a rite of passage, right? You had to go through that, walk of fire in investment banking till 4 a.m. It was a badge of honor, right? To do all that manual grunt work, to be able to say you were a partner or an MD one day. But now we're actually saying, no, it's not actually necessary to do all that stuff to be a great MD. You can learn a lot of things differently than the way it was done 10, 20 years ago, because a lot of that manual work is now actually only needed to be done by agents or robots. And a lot of the other tasty stuff, the real relationship and company building stuff, strategic stuff, can be done by human beings, as it should have always been all along, right?
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, before we wrap things up, we always like to ask our guests for their first or fast favorites. So we'll list off the fast favorites and we'll jump between both of you. So first off, Kunal, for you, your favorite podcast.
Podcasts, to be honest, I don't listen to that many podcasts, so I'm on this. Thank you for having me. Tech Talks, let's go.
Okay, fine. The first and only one in your playlist. Noah, how about you?
I think one of my favorites is AI Daily Brief. I listen to it every morning. It gives me a very succinct update on what's going on in AI on top of different newsletters that I read. So it's a fantastic one. And actually, one of our investors, Portcos, so one of our sister Portcos, sponsors that podcast. So it's always fun to hear a shout out from them every morning as well.
Oh, fantastic. That means now Kunal has to sponsor this podcast because it's his first and only one he's listening to. Next, we'll start with you, Noah, your favorite newsletter or blog.
The Rundown, that's going to be a super basic answer for a lot of people in AI, but that's something where it keeps me up to date, honestly, in a lot of the drama that exists in the AI space, which is so much fun to keep up with.
Well, this was actually a question I was going to ask you guys, because it's a finance sort of focused organization that you're building. When you're bringing in non-finance educated, sort of industry educated people, I used to work at a company that had this exact sort of problem where giving people the language and the short form language that people use in the industry. Do you do crash courses? Do you have things that they need to listen to or books they need to read just to learn about the industry they're building and selling for?
One of the funniest things in their onboarding documents that I made was a glossary of all of the different financial terms.
Yeah.
And I think that it's really fun to see them sit there and scroll through it and kind of get glossy eyed. And then within 2 weeks of working at Farsight and figuring out all the different components and pieces that we have melded together into this product, they immediately know everything. So
That's cool.
I think the best thing that they can do is just get involved with the job. But a nice, funny moment is seeing them scroll through the 100 different words that are financial specific, having them not know any of them. And then when they look through them a week later, they know all of them.
Yeah, just get them to subscribe to Liquidity or something on Instagram. I think they'll be fine with the terms. But we had a monthly either client appreciation or client teach-in, where somebody who was in the industry would come in and do a lunch and learn and just answer questions on what their job was like and what their kind of workflow and language speaking was like. But that's interesting. How about you, Kunal? Favorite newsletter or blog?
Yeah, newsletter and blog. I mean, I typically stay up to date with things just on Twitter feeds. I feel like that's where the AI kind of research and newest developments come out. But in terms of something I read regularly, also probably a pretty basic answer, Morning Brew and Tech Brew. Gives me a really good snapshot of not just like tech related stuff, but a little bit more macro news, which is always good to have, especially as you work in financial industry. Some of it is quite tailored to that end. Helpful to keep up to date.
Yeah, you are pretty active on X, so keep it up. I love what you're working on. How about favorite tech gadget for you, Kunal?
Yeah, I think Noah might have got that one right when he guessed it. Got this cool little pin. I don't have it on me right now, but it's a limitless pendant. Basically, it's this little thing clips onto my shirt. Tap a button, and it'll record important conversations I have throughout the day, technical discussions, business discussions, and then I can get a very quick debrief, via a chat bot. Say, hey, what were the big, open questions or huge takeaways from this conversation I had? I guess it's the most recent gadget I've gotten, but definitely super useful for keeping track of things.
It's called Pin? What's it called?
Limitless.
Limitless.
It's a
Like the
limitless
movie.
pendant.
Got it. How about
Yeah,
you, Noah?
exactly.
Uh, in the spirit of saying something different, because I also think the limitless pin is really cool. I will say an even like a very basic answer, which is my AirPod Pros. Before we recently moved into a much larger office, but before it was kind of like a bullpen of everyone very tightly together, and the noise in there I feel like could like hit an absurd amount of decibels. So having noise canceling headphones was something I didn't really anticipate to appreciate as much as I have. But I think that I couldn't live without them at this
You
point.
appreciate the silence when you can get it. I understand that. How about you, Noah, your
Gotta lock
favorite new
in.
trend?
I think this is a hilarious answer, but something that I do every morning, which is a morning routine. I don't know if you've seen all of that on social media, but that has been like popping off as like a morning routine guy. There's this guy very
Just walk
famous for
us
that.
through it, please.
He like wakes up at 4 a.m.,
No,
like
of course. I
journals,
know.
does
What's
a
yours?
cold. So I wake up really early and I immediately go to the gym. And then afterwards go grab a coffee, spend some personal time, read these newsletters and things like that.
What's early?
You about like 6, 5:30.
Okay, so
I
I'm up
try
at
to go.
5:30 because my child is up crying. But yes, that's early, I guess, on your own. When you
Yeah,
don't have
I
to
mean,
be up early.
I think it's really valuable to be able to get a lot of like personal work done. And it's something where it's made me, I think, more productive during the day by getting a lot of the things that I need to get done out of the way, rather than me thinking about when I'm going to go do them when I get home, like much later at night. So,
Good for you.
I encourage everyone to get involved with that.
That's awesome. Good for you. How about you, Kunal?
Yeah, I kind of taking this a different way, but love the trend of like coding agents becoming a much more top of mind thing. I think every single provider or code editors is put one out at this point, but I love playing around with them and they make me so much more productive. Also, our team too. Everybody's kind of got their own flavors of what they like the best, but yeah, just like so much more productive. Spend more time thinking about like general problems versus like getting into the nitty gritties necessarily. So yeah, I mean, I think that's a super awesome trend. I love it.
Yeah, it's amazing. Our team is up till like 2 a.m. sometimes playing with all these agents, and it's like hard to keep up to date with what everyone's building. So now we're going to have like an AI demo day, for people to be able to showcase some of the tools because there's just no time to really showcase everything people are doing on it. Kunal, how about you? Favorite book?
Probably The Three Body Problem. I love sci-fi in general. But that one probably takes the cake in terms of like not being predictable, or understanding exactly what the outcome will be or how we were going to get there. Also writing style was beautiful. So yeah, definitely that one takes the cake.
When's the movie coming out? Is it out already?
There's a Netflix show.
There's a Netflix show
out.
But I didn't know if there was actually a movie as well coming.
I'm not sure actually. I gotta look that up because I should know.
I thought there was. Okay, how about you, Noah?
I think I have a new favorite recently. One of my really close friends, Darian, he recommended a book called Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. If you've heard of that, it's essentially about three friends from college that come together and start a company it's a gaming company, and it goes on to be like a generational gaming company that everyone is familiar with. But it personally was obviously really relatable, but at the same time, it was almost more of like a glimpse in the life of people, and how they evolve over time. It spanned from like when they were in high school and kids to all the time to all the way to when they're in their late 50s. And I think it was a great lesson on life, but also was obviously relatable to the stuff that I'm doing on a day to day. So can't recommend the book enough for even people not in startups. For the record, it's a fantastic book.
Nice. And last but not least, Noah, your favorite life lesson.
I actually say this a lot. And it's, if you're going to do something, do it right. I personally am under the assumption where if you're, not putting your all into something or really giving it the most of your effort and time, then it's not the best reflection of who you are, because you could be doing a lot more in terms of how much output you give or how much time you spend doing something that you love. And so when it comes, I try to resonate that with the team. We've been talking about mantras for a bit. And I think that if you're going to do something, do it right is something that I live by in every facet of my life. And I think it allows me to really be the best person I can be in almost every situation. So reminding myself to not wing it or half-ass it is pretty important.
I love that. And last, you, Kunal.
Yeah, I mean, maybe this is kind of in line with like Noah's favorite book, but if you're going to do something hard, do it with friends. It's much easier to start a company when you have support of people that you can trust and like have hard conversations with, go back and forth on things with, deal with completely new challenges with. So if you're doing hard things, especially like starting a company, do it with people I think that you can trust fully. And I think that extends quite far beyond just, starting a company as well. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. And thank you so much for joining us in the tank today with Noah Faro and Kunal Tangri from Farsight AI.